Hey, what's up everybody? So today I am in beautiful Boynton Beach, Florida, and I'll be servicing an aquarium down here. Now, what makes this aquarium so special is it's been up for about 8 years now. So it's a very mature aquarium. We picked this job up about, I'd say about right when I started, so about 2 years ago when I came on to Tanknicians. When we first had this aquarium, it was full of xenia. So we painstakingly went through and got rid of all the xenia, and that opened it up to allow other corals to be able to grow. So let's not waste too much time. Let's go inside and let's check out this tank that's about 8 years old. So here we are inside, and as we're walking in, the tank looks pretty good, considering that 2 weeks ago we did a major fragging session in here and disturbed the tank quite a bit. Now real quick, before I get started and going over everything, this whole tank was covered in xenia, absolutely just smothered in xenia, and the only thing that were surviving in here was pulsing xenia and the purple monopora were probably the two dominant corals, and then there were some clove polyps everywhere. We did a treatment, which I'll go over in a second, that got rid of all the xenia, all the clove polyps, was fine for the LPS and the SPS coral. They were fine, but it did hurt some of the soft corals. And this piece in particular, I mean, this thing shrunk. I mean, it was like this big. That's all that was left. And this is one of their favorite corals. And here we are about 8 months later, and look at this thing. It's just taking off. So really excited about that because I knew how much they loved this coral. This is actually bigger than it was before because it has more room to grow because the xenia was taking up about half of that space. So it has more to grow here. And some of the other corals that kind of popped their heads out since we got rid of the xenia. You can see we have some life coming here. This was all but dead. You can even see right there the dead parts, but you can see it's coming back. This is a new addition. That's an acro. The cabbage coral. It was a small little like dime-sized piece, kind of similar to that piece. And now look at it. It's huge because it's not being constantly bothered by the xenia. Ganyapora is looking on a little rough, but I'll get into that in a second. Mushrooms look beautiful. I love that colony of mushrooms. These red mushrooms are looking a little rough. They might be getting stung. So we'll go ahead and move those over. Got some hammer corals that fell over. Still look okay, but they do look a little dull. The color doesn't seem too bright, and they don't look so healthy. This bubble coral is looking good. So we got rid of the xenias, and then that just allowed the monopora to just kind of grow and take over, especially this purple monopora. It had this whole area, and because the soft corals kind of suffered a bit when we did the treatment, this leather coral really didn't do too well. Plus, on top of it, the purple monopora, once the xenia died, really cut into it. So 2 weeks ago, we fragged this whole area of just purple monopora to give him plenty of room to breathe. And we cut it. I mean, it was touching the glass. That's a good probably 7-8 inches from the glass. It was touching the glass, and it was shading all this. And you can see the monopora down here was shaded out and was dying. You can see some life right here. It's coming back. The mushrooms are getting more light now. Star polyp looks good. And then this monopora, this red monopora, was this whole bit of this. And we fragged it down to about this size. And we also are trying to encourage it to grow down instead of up, so you get to see that color instead of just the white underneath. But we did a major fragging for this, and we kind of, this was connected as one piece, and we kind of made it open more so the fish can kind of, it just opened up the whole tank, kind of like two little islands. You got one island here, one island there, and just open it up. The fish can kind of go through. Just makes the tank look a little bit more open. But that monopora is, I mean, it was thick. It was hard to frag. We literally took it out of the tank, but it's looking really good as well. And then this right over here, you can barely see it. You can barely make it out, but that's a Season's Greeting monopora that was smothered by this red one. And I'm hoping now that it's able to get some light that this comes back, because that's a really pretty coral. And I do see some signs of life. If you look over there, you can see some green. So I'm hoping now it's getting light, and the polyps, I can see, it's hard to tell on the camera, but in person, you can see the red polyps are out. So hopefully that can make a comeback, because that's a really pretty coral. Now let's go to the other side and get a view over there. Now we're gonna take a trip to the other side of the tank. And this frog spawn was struggling for a bit. It was very pale in color, and it was a little bit tight to the skeleton. It's looking much better. Cabbage coral's looking nice. And you can see right underneath that purple monopora, there's some Sophastria that's starting to get some color on it. And it was almost died out because that monopora was blocking it. And then you got that giant clam, which is awesome. That giant clam actually moved over. It was centered underneath that monopora, but it's actually moved over all the way to the side because the monopora was shading it. But the thing's about as big as my hand there. We have this little rock here in between separating the two corals so that they don't sting each other. But at first glance, everything looks pretty healthy. You can see on this side we got some zoas, some mushrooms. The zoas look amazing. The eagle eye zoas look great. Trumpet coral looks good. The mushrooms are really starting to take off. So yeah, I think everything's looking pretty good right here. You see underneath here, all that area is dead from the monopora. It's always shaded out, but everything looks good. Now, because everything is tested good and this tank is pretty mature, we don't do, huge water changes on it. We just do about I'm gonna probably do about a 10-15% water change, just kind of freshen things up. But everything's kind of automated and it's getting all the trace elements that it needs. So every 2 weeks we do about a 10-15% water change. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that started right now. So now let's go over some of the corals in the tank. I love this colony of mushrooms right here. The bright orange mushroom is absolutely beautiful. We have a really nice Goniopora, which is struggling a little bit. I've been in here doing a water change, so it's a little irritated, but it does have some discoloration there in the center, but it's looking better than it did in the past, so I do believe it's coming back. Red mushrooms are getting stung most likely by this coral over here, so we'll just go ahead and separate them too. We have Acropora in here, which that started off as a small frag, but it's really taken off right now, so I'm happy to see that do well. Again, the zoas are killing it in this tank. They're looking great. They're open, they're big. The coloration on them all is phenomenal, so I'm really happy that the softies are starting to look good in this tank again. It's hard to believe that this whole area right here, like a lot of this was just covered in Xenia. It's just, everything's just able to thrive now that the Xenia is gone. The Goniopora was getting stung. We had some blue mushrooms over here on the corner here, and they seem to be stinging the Goniopora, so we moved some of that, we fragged it up. And hopefully the Goniopora will be able to do better now and extend out more. There's some hammer corals here that kind of fell off, so we'll find a place to put them, glue them up somewhere. I'm not happy with the color on them yet. Hopefully that can turn around. This bubble coral was dying when we first took over the tank, and now it's just looking so healthy. But you can see, like, look at this monopora. Like, we fragged so much of this monopora. It was shading out this this other green monopora down below. You can see all the dead areas. You can see where the life is coming back now. But it was shaded out that whole area. So seeing these mushrooms with such great color on them, that blue and that like goldish color, that goldish red, makes me really, really happy because, like I said, this tank was filled with pulsing Xenia. This whole tank was just overrun by it, and for whatever except for this monopora right here, but for whatever reason the previous service company thought that was a good way to keep nutrients in control, but it shadowed out all the other corals. We did a fenbendazole treatment in this tank, and it killed the Xenia, but it also took a heavy toll on the soft corals, so the mushrooms and the toadstools, the leathers, and all that type of stuff. So we completely lost the majority of this star pulp. It had a huge spot on that overflow. So it's good to see all this stuff coming back now. Now on the flip side, the 24 karat lepto's doing awesome. Duncan coral, he's a little retracted right now, but he's doing well. This trumpet coral over here was a bigger colony. I put half of it on the other side because the mushrooms started to encroach it, and there were just there's mushrooms on the actual trumpet coral, and it's starting to sting the trumpet coral, and they're actually losing heads. So I'm gonna frag that up some more. And those zoas are going crazy. So between the zoas and mushrooms, there's not room for much else there. It's gonna take constant fragging, and both of those spread really fast. But I put half of that trumpet coral up here, kind of away from everything. It's in its own little spot, so it should be fine there, and do better. And you can see underneath it that's a monopora that was in this tank. The customer wanted it out, but that's a really pretty bright green monopora. I love that. I'm kind of sad to see it go out of the tank, but we fragged a huge piece of it out of the tank, and you can still see it's coming back and growing. That blast's so sick. Such a nice blasto right there. The color on that thing is insane, and it's multiplying. It was started as one head, and it's already taken off a bit. Look at this monopora. Look how thick that skeleton is on the monopora. That's ridiculous. You know how hard it was to cut through that thing? Like, it took some real effort. We definitely made a dent in it, and we're gonna have to continue to frag it. But the color on it still looks good. Even after 2 weeks, it's starting to heal up and looking really good. How do you not love that plate coral right there? Yeah, so I'm just happy with all the color and the way the corals are doing. Yeah, I'm really excited about this, and I can't wait to add more stuff in here now that we have room. Now that we got the water change where we want it, I stopped the water. Let's take a look at the filtration real quick. So, there's a lot going on under here. Now, again, we didn't set this up, but you have your overflow section here, which we have to take out these filter socks and clean them out, and then we throw some floss in there as well to catch some extra small debris. So there you go, that's your filter socks section. We have some acro power that's being dosed into the tank, and then this calcium just blows through calcium and alkalinity. I mean, this is empty. I gotta go get more, but it just blows through calcium and alkalinity. It's absolutely insane how much calcium and alkalinity this tank goes through. Then you got your protein skimmer, which over here was a refugium section, but we're not running that just because I said, like, to be able to, the nitrates and phosphate in this tank are pretty much non-existent. So like, we have to dose nitrate sometimes in this tank just because it's such a well-functioning mature tank that there's not a lot of nitrate and phosphate in this tank. So there's no need to run a refugium just yet. We got a little extra filter floss in here that helps as a barrier to help anything that gets past the filter socks to kind of get that out. There are some reactors in here. We didn't put these reactors in here. This is from a previous service company that was doing it. We don't use these. There's no need to use a phosphate reactor when you have zero phosphates all the time. And over here, I do have the tank shut off. We have your return section and you have your return section and then your ATO right over here, which now this is a little bit messy because I was changing out these sensors and some of the sensors here because they were malfunctioning, so I had to replace them. But it runs on an Apex system, so I'm able to do everything from my phone, shut the tank on and off through my phone, check the dose, change the dosing, you know, all the stuff that Apex offers you, which is really cool, but also can be a pain in the butt because, as you can see here, finding the sensors to get all this stuff to work when one's malfunctioning can be a little bit tedious. So I'll leave it at that. But it's a good size sump for this size tank. I mean, it's pretty dang big. I mean, it's the length of the tank. So I love that about it. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna take these filter socks out. I'm gonna go ahead and clean them. We're gonna do some maintenance down here, and then we'll start pumping back in. Now, as we are pumping back in, let's go over the lights. We have 3 of the Hydra Aqualumination 64 lights on here. These are relatively brand new. I think we put them on about 6 months ago, and they are doing well. Anybody who says, you know, you can't grow, you know, SPS with LEDs, I definitely challenge that, because in my experience, I mean, look at this acro colony started. I mean, it was like this big, and now you can see it's just growing like crazy. And the color on it, it's hard to tell because the blues are on, but the color on this is really nice. It's bright blue and green, and it's got some yellows and purples on it also. And this monopora, I mean, took up this whole area, and this purple monopora just won't stop growing. But you can see right here, I mean, again, like the color on this is pretty decent, especially after being fragged. So don't buy into the hype. I mean, obviously with T5s and maybe certain other lights you can get, you know, they're definitely good for SPS, but you can have success with LED lights for sure. I mean, the aqua illuminations definitely work, and Red Sea I've seen grow all types of acros and monopora and things like that. Look at that whirlpool. Got a little mini tornado under here. All right, so that's it. I'm all done here. I'm really happy with the way this tank is progressing, especially after everything we put it through with getting rid of the Xenia, with, you know, the 2 weeks ago, the major fragging that we did. So I'm really excited. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I got plenty more tanks like this that I'm gonna be videotaping and sharing with you guys if you're interested. I hope you enjoy. All right, have a good one, everybody.